All right.
Yeah.
So when do we start?
You ready?
I am.
All right. Welcome to the Lalo Dagach podcast. I am here with Ari Hershkowitz. Did I get that right?
Yep, you did.
Awesome.
Unlike a lot of other podcasters.
Nice. So it's Ari, right? Ari?
That one you didn't get right. It's Ari.
What is it?
Ari.
Ari. Oh, it is Ari. Okay. For some reason I thought I said it wrong.
Yeah, my religious name is Aryeh, but it's I like Ari better.
Ari. Okay. So Ari was featured in a Netflix documentary called One of Us. And Ari grew up in a Hasidic Jewish community in New York. And they live in a very isolated community. They're very Orthodox. And they live somewhat outside the rules and laws of the U.S. and what they refer to as secular law. And Ari, I believe, since the last, 2 years now, you've left that community?
On August 29th, it's going to be 3 years since I came out as not religious.
Okay, so let's go way back to the beginning. Even before you were born, what is Hasidic Judaism?
Well, Hasidic Judaism is the ultra-orthodox version of Judaism, like Judaism on steroids. They take everything way too seriously, and there's rules and sub-rules down to the smallest details. I think the way it was developed is the way it came about, and I might be wrong on that because Hasidic Judaism doesn't really explain things. It's just we do it because we do it. But as far as I understand, Judaism was sort of falling apart and with intermarriage and all of that, and people sort of kind of got together and I guess crowned a rabbi in every town, or which rabbis was not a thing 1,000 years ago. Moses was not a rabbi. Moses was a leader, but they started not crowning, but whatever, a rabbi in every town and city.
Anointing?
And anointing, I guess, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that became that sect of Hasidic Judaism. The Hasidic Judaism that we have now is an even more strict and insular. Way back, it was more open and welcoming to one. But after World War II, it became about we're doing our own thing. We don't let anyone in. We don't let anyone out. It's the only that's our method of survival.
From what I understand, the form of Judaism, especially in the community you practice, was a product of World War II and the Holocaust. That this group of Hasidic Jews believed that the Holocaust was a punishment from God for distancing themselves from their traditions and religion and integrating and mixing with the culture at large in Germany. So when they arrived in the United States, they thought they had to appease God and for the wrong they had done by coming back to their traditions, becoming more Orthodox, only marrying within the Jewish community and such. Is that about right?
It's about right, but it was also more about besides the belief that the Holocaust was a punishment by God, and that we have to repent for that. And it's believe it or not, we have to apologize for the Holocaust. We have to apologize to God for bringing God to this. Besides that, it was also about we cannot survive any longer in this way, and if we keep doing what we were doing before, Judaism will not continue. So we have to stick to every tiny detail in Judaism, even if it was something that was born out of something else, not even really part of Judaism. It was just like they call it a minhag. A minhag is like something that sort of developed over time and then became part of Judaism, and from that something else developed and that became part of Judaism.
Ah, okay. That makes a lot, because I've been researching quite a bit since I found out we were going to talk, and I came across a woman who had written a couple of books now, Deborah Feldman, and was researching what she had said about it, and she was commenting that, and I think it goes to what you were just saying, that for example Yiddish, we associate as a Jewish language. It's not really a Jewish language. It's kind of appropriated to be Jewish. And even she was saying like the dress you'd see like in a Hasidic community is more Russian in origin, and so but it becomes Jewish in the tradition you're describing.
Right.
Right. Okay. Um.
Right, because we did something for so many years, it becomes Jewish, and
Mm-hmm.
if we add something on top of it, that becomes Jewish. So, like the great grandchild of an actual religious rule can now be something that you would be shunned over.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of I don't think a lot of people know too much about Hasidic Judaism. And it was very new to me, and I had heard of these communities, but I hadn't researched it really, and it was very enlightening and shocking to see the documentary. But the documentary is filmed a little bit more artistic than formative. It doesn't give us too much of an in-depth knowing of your community and who the characters were, such as yourself, the people in there were. So can you tell us about yourself and growing up in this community?
Sure. Well, I just want to say first, the documentary was not about Hasidic Judaism. It was about the story of three individuals who had left, and as they're leaving, what happened to them and how their story is developing. So it wasn't about Hasidic Judaism. Otherwise, it would have been more informative about the community. So a little about myself before I left. At what age do I start?
I mean, tell me about the background of your parents if you want.
My parents are part of the Satmar sect of Judaism, which is one of the stricter ones within Hasidic Judaism, and which is already pretty strict. And the interesting fact about them, they were actually on opposite ends of the Satmar throne war. They're like family. So when a rabbi dies, usually one of his sons would take over leadership. But in Satmar, and quite often it turns into a war between two of a rabbi's sons. And my father and my mother were actually, their families were on opposite sides of the Satmar throne war. But they were both from Satmar, and the two are pretty similar. And but they made it work. They built a lovely home together, and yeah, they were from Satmar, and I don't know when exactly, like my great grandparents or when they joined Satmar, or how that came about, but it was pretty strict, and we followed every rule down to the tiniest detail.
So tell me, what is daily life like for a child in this community?
At what age?
As earliest age as you can remember. Like, what would you do regularly? Do you just go to school? What do you do?
Well, I don't have like a lot of vivid memories from my early childhood. By vivid, I mean both like colorful and good. Meaning I don't remember so clearly. Besides, I mean, for several reasons, but mainly because I wanted to forget. But early childhood was the daily life was pretty much get up, go to Cheder, which was the religious school, and there for a bunch of hours, and that was a combination of prayers, preaching, and learning Judaic studies mostly, or for a lot of years only, and then come home pretty late, and then do it again tomorrow. There was no like activity, like exercise activities, outdoor stuff. There was
You don't play sports? There's no sports played at all?
No. Actually, for at summer camp, if I was caught with a baseball, I could get in trouble for that.
You can get in trouble even for having like a basketball or a baseball or anything.
Yes. Well, I say baseball because that was small enough so we could hide it and play with it. Basketball, we would never. That was out of the question. But yeah, we used to hide the baseballs.
And how disconnected were you from the outside society? Because it seems to me in like the documentary that these communities are like right in the middle of New York, but you seem to be right on the border with what they call the secular world in the documentary. But there seems to be a
Right.
huge divide between you and that world. So how divided was that? I mean, would you interact? I mean, also the schools you go to are only Hasidic Jews. So was there any interaction with the outside world?
There was some interaction with the outside world, but it wasn't really interaction with the outside world. It was more like interaction with other people. I don't know, like the cleaning staff at school. They were Jewish, and the janitors. Like that was pretty much it. But I didn't speak English. Definitely not well enough to keep a conversation going, and I wasn't allowed to go anywhere else, like shopping or use the subway or listen to non-Jewish music, or even Jewish music there is not Hasidic, and non-Jewish newspapers. All of that was completely banned. So the only interaction that I had with anyone else was not Hasidic and Jewish. Was pretty much people like the janitors at school.
That's an aspect I found really shocking when that I didn't know until this documentary. That you're only taught Yiddish. The children there don't know English, despite being in the middle of New York. And this
Yeah.
is done to isolate the people from the outsiders, correct?
Yes, because they're like the way they work is if we keep them away from if we don't give them the ability, if we take away the ability of them to like learn anything else, the only option they have is to stay, pretty much. It's how would I say that? They make the outside world, they make it out to be such this evil, monstrous entity or notion that's out to get us. So it's not like we don't talk to them because we're not allowed to. We don't talk to them because we're smart. We're smarter than talk. We're smarter than you know. How do I say that? Um, we're better than being the kind of people who would like go talk to these goyim.
So you're taught that you're better than the world around you, and that's why and
Oh,
that's one of the reasons you say. Are they also taught like the outside world is evil?
yes, very much so. We were constantly told, Isa Lianka, which is every non-Jewish person hates every Jewish person. That's pretty much what it is. It's pretty much like what we were told. It was constantly repeated. Isa Lianka. That a non-Jewish person hates a Jewish person. We were constantly told um, how would I say it? I'm still having trouble finding the right words in English sometimes. We're told how like compared to animals, the non-Jewish people are, and the reason we don't talk to them is because they're simply like we know better than to fall into these traps of internets and riding bicycles on the street and all of that stuff. We know better than that.
And there's no phones. There's no, I mean, cell phones with like internet connection or anything like that. There's no internet computers for you to search the web. How about
Well,
TV or anything along those
oh
lines?
no, TV was banned a long time ago. TV was there was a whole war against TV quite a few years ago. I wasn't. It was before my time. They won that battle, the rabbis, and I don't think any Hasidic Jew has a TV at home. If maybe it's like a percent of a percentage, a select few. But when it came to the internet, it was a bit tougher for them. Um, so they actually had a which is a big convention, and I think the number of people that were there was between like 60 and 80,000 people. I'm not sure. They had rented out a stadium, and they sold out all of the seats, and they had to rent out another stadium for the rest. And it was a whole convention against the internet, and there were rules put in place that, first of all, nobody can have internet at home for any reason. No internet at home. That means computers, phones, anything. If someone does need internet, it's for business only, and it needs an internet filter controlled by the sect of Judaism that one is a member of. And for most people, that means like only email open or like a very select few websites. And the rest, some people have the kind of filter that is like filters each page individually. So like I would search for a crown on Shutterstock to use as part of a graphics project, and because the crown is semi resembles skin color, it will be blacked out.
Yeah, I remember the images in the documentary of the stadium, but I didn't know that convention was especially to talk about the internet and banning it.
Yeah, that was the only goal of that convention. Like most Hasidic rabbis came together and wrote something. I think it was called a Kalkura or something, where like a bunch of rabbis signed something. It's like a bipartisan thing where like we all come together to fight this evil thing. We may be on opposite ends of this. We may be on not. We may not agree on a lot of things, but we all agree that the internet's got to go.
Yeah, that's What about books? Was there any allowing of books that were not about Judaism?
Well, yes, but there had to be. There actually was censorship in
Hmm.
books. Besides censorship within books, there was this thing called I don't remember what it's called, but most of the books that I read that were allowed in the house that I grew up in, the first few pages of the book had little letters from rabbis, respected community members that were signed, and they said, "I have read this book. This is kosher." Most of the books they still do that. Even like novels, just
Hmm.
random stories or whatever. They had the first few pages with a couple of they had to show it around to if it wasn't a requirement, but if you wanted people to buy the book and allow it in their house, uh, the the efficient thing to do was to get a couple of rabbis to read it and approve it and sign it. So there was censorship on that front, and on like which books are available in Jewish homes, and then there was censorship within books, like the educational books that we had to use in school were heavily censored, as you can also see in One of Us, um, where they blacked out with like magic markers a lot of parts that didn't agree with them.
Yeah, they blacked out with a marker the faces of all the girls in what looked like a book for kids in elementary school.
Yeah, like
Mm.
when I was a few years old, and that was actually I think that particular book was at the girls' school. The In the boys' school, the education is significantly worse, like the secular education. We start secular education a lot later, and we only have it for 4 years, for an hour at the end of the day, and most subjects are skipped, and it's just a giant mess. So for us, we had the censorship a lot worse.
How is it worse? What would they censor that made it worse?
Uh, Pretty much anything. Like almost on every page, there was half of it scribbled out, and we couldn't see what was there. And mostly it would be like anything that didn't agree with them.
Mm.
An English word that could get someone to question, even if it's not directly linked to like God or anything. But how would I explain it? They weren't holding back on the censorship. They uh, anything that could even remotely get someone to think about contemplating to question was censored.
What about the word atheism?
I did not know that existed.
You didn't know? You
We
never?
knew it.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I never heard the word atheist. I knew it as apicoides, which means apicoides means what is it? Well, atheist, I think. Heretic is that the word? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, heretic. Yeah,
Yeah.
but a heretic
So
is a person who has committed a sin against a religion or spoken against a religion, versus an atheist is just not a non-religious person. So is that word more
uh,
closer to heretic?
I'm not sure. Honestly, I
Mm.
never knew the difference, but there are certain levels
Mm-hmm.
in Judaism which from which you can see the value of a person's life, and that is I'm going to say it first and then explain it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to make sense. Some people how would I say it exactly? Like you push them down, but you don't lift them up. Some people, for some people it's like your choice if you want to do that. For some people, you lift them up, but don't push them down. Which is, let's say you're in a scenario where you see that person drowning. Is that person a Jew? Then you have to save them, and you're not allowed to not do anything. You're not allowed to drown them. If the person is not a Jew, it's really up to you. If you want to save them, go ahead. If you don't feel like it, you want to finish your cigarette, then you don't have to save them. And then an epicurus is someone that if you see them drowning, you actually have to keep them underwater, and you're not allowed to help them. You actually have to basically keep them underwater. So that's how you would see how much a person's life is valued. And Epicurus is like the lowest of all of that.
Oh, wait. So wait, I get the difference. Like if they're not Jewish, but what is the difference between those two people that you just don't help versus you push them under?
Well, someone who is Jewish, you have to help them.
Right.
Someone who is not Jewish, but religious or not exactly an atheist or anything, just didn't happen to be born as a Jew,
Right.
then it's like you want to help them, you're allowed to.
Okay.
Yeah, like God is allowing people to save someone else from drowning. That is so nice of you. But if you don't want to help them, that's totally cool. It's like you see them drowning, you know you haven't finished your cigarette yet. You don't have to rush to it. And then if someone is openly an atheist or heretic, then and you see them drowning, you actually have to keep them underwater, and you're not allowed to help them even if you want to.
Okay. What is this? Is this something that's taught to kids?
Yes.
Do you remember kind of what age you were taught this?
Trying to think. What is
Roughly.
it? Malen v'le meriden, meriden v'le malen. Okay, so the first time I remember this was, I think I was between the age of 10, around 10 years old. And that is actually something we learn in Mishnayos, which is part of the oral Torah. And
Mm-hmm.
we learned that in Mishnayos, and that's also something we learn when in the 30 days or a year following someone's death, there's like specific parts of Mishnayos that people learn like in their honor. Then it helps them like go up a level in heaven or something. And it was in that part. So at any age when someone has lost a relative, that's when they definitely become familiar with that part of Mishnayos. Other than that, it's somewhere, I think it's somewhere between the age of 8 and 12 where you would learn it the first time.
Is there anything else you could add to your religious upbringing or teaching that you think would be surprising or people would be unknown to people who are just kind of familiar superficially with Judaism?
Honestly, I think I'm the wrong person to answer that
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of this stuff is not surprising to me because I grew up in it.
Right.
And sometimes when I tell it to people as like, casually without thinking that I'm dropping a bomb right now, and people are, I get such a shock response, and I'm wondering why is that so shocking? And I don't realize that I was born and raised in this, and it's so normal to me. So I might be the wrong person to ask this. But I can just tell you, if I take a step back from religion and I let's say I look at it like as like a third party and just think about, for example, how circumcision goes down.
Mm-hmm.
If religion didn't exist and someone starts talking about circumcision, they would be put in a mental facility, especially how it's done around here.
How is it
And
done in your community?
it's done when the child is 8 days old, and they cut off most of the foreskin, bite off the rest with their mouth, and then
Bite
suck
off
out
the
a little
rest?
bit. Yes, that is actually how it's being done.
Uh-huh.
Bite off the rest with their mouth, and then the rest they suck out a little bit of the blood, and then spit out the foreskin with the blood into a cup full of sand. That's exactly how it's supposed to go down. And to me, it wasn't shocking a few years ago because I just kind of like knew it all the time. But when I tell it to people, they get really shocked, and I only realized after seeing the shock on other people's faces how messed up this is.
If you saw my face right now, you'd see a face of shock. Um, uh, I was shocked before that too, before about what you said before. Um, I want to know what you think is the difference in upbringing between men and women. Like, how would you see the woman being treated, or what liberties did they have or didn't have compared to the men? What was the gender differences in the dynamic of your community, at least in the age you were there?
Right. The men are the boys are bred to be a rabbi or as close to that as you can possibly get. So it's learning all day, very little of anything else like secular studies or like stuff that's going to help you in life, like like gym class or anything like that was like that's not going to help you in your path to rabbiship. So we're just going to cut it out. The women were raised to be a mother, give birth to as many children as you can, cook, clean, like this is your job in life. And so they were actually taught a little more like English, math, and stuff like that, so they can pick up, like take some of the weight off of the men. And they were also expected to be a lot. They're also expected to be a lot. How do I say that? Like a lot. They definitely are second class. It straight up is that way.
Mm-hmm.
There is no choice for them in any way. Unlike the men, where it's like a little easier. Like my mom still does not have a driver license and is not allowed to have one. Still,
Mm-hmm.
in 2018 in New York City,
Women can't drive in your community at all? At
nope,
any
they're not
age?
allowed to drive at any age. Never.
And you were saying there's no bicycles used either.
No, women cannot have a bicycle. Definitely not. They're not allowed to drive one, to ride one either.
Can women go out by themselves?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I know I heard in some Muslim countries that is not allowed, but it isn't that way here.
Okay.
It ends up being that they don't often go out by themselves because they have 10 kids at home to take care of. But there's no official rule against that. But like the shopping centers and the malls and all of that are made out to be these evil places that are trying to, lure us into secular lifestyle. So we should stay away again, not because we're not allowed to go there, but because we're smart enough not to fall into the trap.
Right. So technically they could go. There's not exactly like a hard teaching against it, but women usually can't go out by themselves because they have so many kids at home, and usually they just go locally around the area they live in, which is all Hasidic Jew.
Right. And another thing, they're not given the necessary tools. They don't have a driver's license, and this may also be surprising, but it wasn't surprising to me until a while ago. A lot of Hasidic women, a significant amount, don't have like credit cards or their own bank account. I right now work in a Hasidic, a place that serves a lot of Hasidic people. One of the things that are available in that store are internet kiosks, which are filtered. So even if someone needs internet access, they can go to that place, pay by the hour or whatever, and use a desk there, which is filtered, where the internet is filtered. And when they pay for it by the hour, and they come up to the desk, and I give them a price, and they a significant amount of the women ask me if they can give me a credit card number because they don't have an actual credit card to swipe. They just have their husband's number and they enter it. And so it's like they're not given the tools to go out and do stuff because a lot of them don't have credit cards. They don't have a driver's license. They're not well equipped to do it, even though there's no like official rule against doing it.
There's a moment in the documentary where you were approached by a Hasidic Jewish man. I don't know if he was a rabbi, but you were sitting in a park and you were on a computer, and he asked you about the internet or Wi-Fi. I could tell he was upset about it, quite a few things, the way you're dressed, your hair, but was he also upset the fact that you were just using a computer and a Wi-Fi?
No, that's actually not at all what he was upset about. So I'll just give you a bit of background about that scene. So we were filming in the park. Actually, we were filming how I was in a park looking for a job at the time. I was trying to get clean. A job would help me, give me some stability, and and I was looking for a job, and they were filming that. And then here comes this Hasidic guy and starts talking to me, asking me, "Is there free Wi-Fi in this park?" And at first, I thought he wants internet access, and I was so glad to help. I told him, "There's no free Wi-Fi right here, but I'm using a hotspot from my phone, and please, if you want the password, I'll give it to you." And he said, no, he wants to know if there's free Wi-Fi because he wants to prevent others from having free Wi-Fi, and he wants to know if the reason I'm in that park and not somewhere else is because that there's like a leak of Wi-Fi going on in the community in that area. And then we started conversation about all that, and he said, well, I told him there's free Wi-Fi there and there, and he started talking about it becomes a hangout for all the Hasidic Bochurim, which is the teenagers. They come there for the free Wi-Fi and whatever, and then we started talking about that. So he was trying to prevent the evil of the internet from breaking through our defenses.
Well, let's go back to whatever point it is that you start to question all of this. When did that start, and why?
It started around when I was 12. So I went through some pretty horrible experiences when I was younger, and I didn't. Besides the fact that I had some untreated mental issues, and that my parents were praying away, and the fact that I just didn't get along well with everyone. Some things happened in my life that got me to actually seek the help of God. So I was basically asking God, what am I doing wrong here? Like, if this is happening to me, there must be something that I'm doing wrong. And I was praying and asking, what is it? What am I doing wrong? I really want to know. I want to better myself. I don't want to hurt you. Speaking to God, like, I don't want to disobey you, but I don't know what it is that I'm doing wrong. And then I was just ghosted on by the highest entity that I knew about. Got no response on that. So I started asking questions from the people who were supposed to help a child when they're confused, my teachers, my parents, and everyone. And they all gave me the same, vague non-answers. We don't ask that question, and that's harmful thinking. And that's when I started questioning if this whole Judaism, specifically Hasidic Judaism, is really really has something solid behind it.
What did that lead you to? Did you try to look for books? Did you try to use the internet uncensored? What did you do about it?
Well, at first, I was dealing with the immediate issue, which was my pain, and I started to self-harm.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of worked. Physical pain, unfortunately, helps dull mental pain. Don't know how it works, but it worked. It was the closest thing to painkillers that I had at the time. And I started looking for other ways to find my answers, like you said. And um, I was looking for any access I would ask questions from strangers on the street, like the randomest questions. And a lot of people looked at me really creepily, but I was really desperate for answers. I would go to places like GameStop. I don't know how popular GameStop is. I know it exists in New York, but
Mm-hmm. What is it?
it's a like a gaming store, I think.
Okay.
So I would go to there was a GameStop not far from the Cheder, the yeshiva, the Hasidic school that I was in, and one of their like gaming devices had a browser, and I would go there. It was on display for use, and I would go there and I would browse the internet. And I would be there for as long as I could, and I would go to like these internet cafes. Uh, I don't think those exist anymore. Like people have smartphones now, but quite a few years ago, there were internet cafes, and I would go there and print out Wikipedia pages, and then take it back to school with me and read it. And I would like mark with the red pen what I don't understand, and go back and print out the next article. And that's how I started my research.
You said in the documentary, Wikipedia is a gift from God.
Yes, yeah, that's how I felt at the time. It was so amazing because it's not clear in the film how desperate I was for answers. I was so desperate, and I'm a very curious person. I'm a very logical and rational person. Things just have to make sense to me. If you want me to live a certain lifestyle and be 100% in a certain way, you got to give me some answers here. And that wasn't available. Then I was really desperate for information. And the way I first got my information, when I got first a basic phone, was a service called Cha, which I don't think it exists anymore. It was a question answering service by text. I could text a question and then it answers, and they had people answering. And then I got a smartphone with internet, and at first I didn't know about like Google, Wikipedia, and all of that. So this is weird, but the way I got my information was by like reading the newspaper, finding like ads, seeing billboards, and then typing in the URL, looking it up, and reading up about it. And funny like note about that, I actually used to love pop-up ads online,
Really?
because that was yes, because that was like a little bit of information, like a little treat of information that I didn't have to work for. Like I didn't have to go out and find like a billboard or anything and look for a URL. It was like a treat. I found one URL and that gave me another one, and I was so I was like, that should tell you how desperate I was for information, any information that I could get. But at some point I stumbled upon Wikipedia, and then I was like high on that for a couple of days. That was like a crazy experience for me.
Give me an example when you say you were printing out Wikipedia pages. I mean, Wikipedia has everything. So you're at what age here at this point that you're doing this?
I think I looked back on it when I first found Wikipedia. What was it? 13? No, not 13. 14?
So okay, like let's say 14.
Later.
You
Yeah,
you
about.
you print out. You go to an internet cafe. You can print out a few pages from Wikipedia. What do you print out? Considering you don't know almost anything about anything really. Because I'm so curious. What does a person print out in that case?
Well, it was anything that I could like see on the street. Like if I would go on the street and see like a commercial for like tacos, I'd be like, that looks good. It looks tasty. What exactly is a taco? Let me look it up on Wikipedia. So like it wasn't even about like immediately going to the heavy stuff, philosophy and religion and everything. It was just like, what is a taco? I want to know what a taco is.
So you didn't even understand the world around you yet.
No, absolutely not. And I was very much shielded from that.
Wow. See, my intuition, and I think a lot of people might be thinking like you were going on there and you might be searching for science and philosophy and history, but you were looking up, what is a taco? Where does that come from? That's
Yeah, what is a
yeah,
taco? I
yeah.
was really curious what those are because they look really delicious. And like everything that I would see on the street. Recently, I actually found one of my old hard drives where I backed up. I had a flash drive where I would like save PDFs of all the Wikipedia pages. And a couple years ago, I backed up all my flash drives and I found a hard drive of that. And I was actually with a friend when I found it. And we were going through it, and it was embarrassing, but it was also kind of like a really good like, oh, I remember those days. Those were somewhat fun. Um, and I looked over the list, and it was, normal stuff, like everyday stuff, like I'll say it again, tacos.
Hmm.
And then it was like, particle accelerator
Right.
and everything in between. I actually,
Uh,
in one of those, I'm going to send you a picture of this later, of that whole folder.
okay.
And like atheism is in there, particle accelerator is in there, and a bunch of science stuff and like thought-provoking stuff,
Hmm.
and then like really, really simple stuff. I gotta remember the simple stuff that was there.
You should. I think that, I mean, that's the most interesting part about it. I think that you tell me that you can look up anything on Wikipedia and this magic fountain of knowledge, and you want to know what a taco is, but that's fascinating because it's something everyone else takes for granted, and it's not some foreign thing that's really far away from you. It's just right outside your community, right? Like, this is New York. Like, there's tacos everywhere, and there's all kinds of foods.
Yes, but I still didn't know what all of that is. And later on, when I got a better smartphone that could play video, and I would start like watching like TV shows and movies, and I got a lot of knowledge from that. That's when I started looking up on Wikipedia everything that I would see in a movie. And and interesting point on that, actually, my very first movie was Air Force One, with Harrison Ford, and I watched that on a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch screen. It was 90 by 90 pixels. It was like an MP3 player that I had that was considered kosher, that I flashed another firmware on it so I could play video on it. And that's how I saw my first movie. And, when he got to the part where he says, "Get off my plane," I was like, oh, they were on a plane up until now. I just realized that.
Oh, you didn't know they were on a plane at the beginning?
Well, not literally, but it was a 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch screen,
Right. Okay.
90,
Yeah. Yeah.
90
Yeah.
by 90 pixels, and it's not really how you should or want to watch a movie.
Okay. So you couldn't even visually really see it that well. So you were kind of you didn't know
Right.
it
So
was a
I
plane.
got
Yeah.
my information in like little bits and pieces, and I had to put a lot of energy into like translating that information into something that I could actually learn from, and like put together a picture of what secular life looks like. So like I got a lot of my references from Family Guy, and we all know that's like a horrible reference at
Hmm.
what life actually looks like. And this is actually true. I knew about Frank Sinatra, but I wasn't sure if he was real or a Family Guy character.
Oh, because you had only seen him in Family Guy?
Yes, I only knew about Frank Sinatra and Family Guy, and I knew about that character, but I wasn't sure, is that a real person mentioned in Family Guy, or is it a Family Guy character that they made up?
What were the favorite things you were consuming? The movies, Family Guy, Wikipedia, or was it just all so new and exciting that you just loved it all?
No, it was Wikipedia mostly.
Yeah.
Wikipedia was just so awesome. I think back to those days, and honestly, I kind of miss those days a tiny bit, because I was like, it's like when someone is in the desert for so long and they just water, simple water is so refreshing. And And it's like, what is it? The suspense of waiting for so long for something and then finally getting it. So that was actually like I was high on Wikipedia. Like I couldn't stop smiling when I found Wikipedia because it was so amazing, and I missed that feeling of finally having that glass of water.
I find it fascinating because I speak to a lot of people who grew up in extremely religious families, sometimes cults. So, a lot of them are very straight up real cults all over the world. And I'm always fascinated by the fact that there's some people who grow up secular and look to join fundamentalist religious groups. And then there's people like you who were brought up in these communities completely isolated, but it seems like there's just something inside you just have to know. Like you have to see what's, on the other side of the wall, right? And I imagine that's not how everybody feels in your community. Some people are
No,
very like,
absolutely not.
right? Like that's not like, it's not like every other child you knew growing up necessarily wanted to do what you were doing. And I imagine a lot of people when they get older, they're very conformed to the community. So I just wonder if there's some inherent need in some people. There's like a gene or something. There's something biological for some people where they're so inquisitive. Like, because I mean, you were just brought up in the most isolated box you could possibly put somebody in, and they couldn't keep you down. They couldn't keep you from looking, right? And
No, I was not going to stop until I have answers. And honestly, I still
yeah,
don't have a lot of the answers, but I'm going to keep searching.
yeah, yeah. I mean, now, I mean, well, so where does the story go from there? I mean, you're
Well,
consuming this stuff and you're seeing this world. Did you want to experience more? Did you? I mean, where does the story go?
well, first of all, I wanted to tell you, just build on what you just said. Um, so everybody is looking for like a meaning in life. Everybody is, because we all die at some point, and it's very comforting to either know that there is something waiting for me after this life. That's like a very comforting thing. I'm doing all these good things and I'm going to get rewarded for that. So it's like I don't die. I don't ever die. I just move on to another phase. And it's also very comforting to know that you have a purpose in life. And for a lot of people, it is it's like it is like a drug. It's like, I have God, and that's like a one size fits all answer for every question that I have. Something goes bad, God is testing me, or God is trying to reward me for this later. Something goes good, oh my Lord, you are so good to me. It's a really good meaning in life. For me though, that didn't work because I need an actual answer. I'm not okay with you'll find out when you die, or just believe it'll be okay. I'm not okay with all that. I need actual answers. Now, you asked me where I went from there. Um, I I really, really wanted to leave. I realized that there are no answers where I'm at now, and there might be some answers in other places. I really wanted to leave, but at the time, I saw that as an unrealistic wish because we're constantly told that people leave, they end up dead, they end up in jail, they end up in rehab, and they keep saying that everybody comes back at some point. They regret it when they're 60. So don't make the mistake of leaving and then coming back when you're 60, having wasted your entire life. And they keep pointing out to people who left. And, I spoke to them yesterday. They're so unhappy. So I really thought it was unrealistic. And that was very like soul crushing. I mean, not soul crushing. Soul doesn't exist, but you know what I mean. Um, it was heart wrenching. Okay,
Yeah,
I think that's a better
yeah, heart
term.
wrenching. Good one. Yeah, good save.
Yeah, and I thought that I'm never going to be able to leave, and that's it for me. So my next option was, okay, fine, I'll be in this prison for the rest of my life. Might as well enjoy it. Well, not enjoy it, but might as well not suffer as much. And I turned to substances.
Substance abuse. You
substance abuse, yeah.
yeah, you got into
And
drugs, yeah.
that went on for quite a while, and just just ruined my livelihood.
Mm-hmm. Did you get into it really bad?
It was pretty bad. In total, I like from start to finish. Well, didn't really finish, but I'm sober now. But it's a lifelong battle. But from when I first started using until now, I was hospitalized 8 times for substances. Not all were life threatening, but a couple times were like my heart beat at 211, and it was like, let's get him to hospital before he has a heart attack and that kind of thing. There was one time where the screen just turned to black. Like I basically passed out and then woke up later. Um, so not all were life threatening, but I was hospitalized 8 times and it got pretty bad. And yeah, so to answer your question,
Was that
it did get
completely a
pretty bad.
product of depression? You think of not of this light you saw of the outside world, and then you just couldn't have it according to your community?
Right. It was like I wanted answers, and I was told, and it was made very clear to me that you don't want to go there. Those people die. Those people are bad. Those people, you're not going to make it out there. And, you're just going to come back when you're 60 and regret it. And so if I can't go there, this is my only option. And this sucks. Then, you know, unfortunately, substances work really well at numbing the harsh reality of life, the uncomfortable reality, whatever reality someone is. And that's usually, at least in the circles that I've been in, why people turn to drugs in the first place in any scenario, religious or not. Reality is horrible. You don't see a way out of it. Might as well make this reality a little easier, or at least be extremely numb and not be aware that you're in this reality.
Yeah. So you went to a rehabilitation after that?
Yeah, and in Florida. But first, I came out as not religious
Oh, okay.
right around the time when I first tried to get clean.
Okay.
And
Who did you come out to? Your
well,
family?
everyone at the same time. Everyone at the same time. I posted on Facebook a picture without payas, and I wrote, if you go back to my profile pictures on Facebook of August of 2015, I posted a picture of me without payas and a beard, and I was like, "This is me now. Deal with it."
Can you explain payas?
Payas is the side locks.
Mm-hmm.
The side locks a good enough explanation.
Yeah, yeah, the curls on the side
Yeah,
that
the
you
curls on
see.
the side.
Mm-hmm.
So I cut that off, posted a picture on Facebook. I wrote, "This is me now. Deal with it." And just from that, there was a storm after that. But before that, like, it was a long planned decision. Like, it was a long planned plan, I guess. Um, but at the same time, it was also an impulse decision, because I've been dreaming of that day for a long time, but I always knew that it's not going to happen. And even after I realized that, yeah, some people do make it, I realized that my family is going to drop me, my friends. I'm going to be like, an 18-year-old with no one in their life. And so I like held back on doing that. Like, my parents knew what I was up to, but they didn't. But it was kind of like a status quo. Like, nobody talked about it because I hadn't come out as not religious. Until I got more like until I like developed a network of friends within the sober community. And this one time, Friday night, I was invited to hang out with a couple of recovering addicts in Manhattan, and I went on the train. Friday night is when Shabbat starts, so I put on a hoodie and sunglasses in the middle of the night, and like snuck out so nobody would see me go on the train, and it was great. And they invited me to a picnic with them the next morning, and it was in August, and it was like 90-degree weather, and I wore a hoodie and I covered up and everything, in fear that someone would recognize me going on the taking a train on Shabbat. And when I got there, I was still wearing my hoodie and covering up just in case someone walks by. And I just realized, I just got sick of it, and I took out my phone, Googled for the nearest barbershop. I went there, told them to cut it off, and then went back to the picnic. When I got back, it was like people who I just, like, my new friends were like, I feel like I've seen you somewhere. I feel like we've met, but I don't remember where.
Wow. You must have been really nervous at that last moment when you went into that barbershop, though. You tell it kind of quickly, but that must have been very hard to like let the barber actually cut those. How did you feel at that moment?
I was freaking out. I was really freaking out, but I realized that that's it. I can't live like this anymore. If I stay, I'm gonna go right back to drugs. And I was clean then for like a minute, maybe I had like a month clean, maybe, and like maybe just a couple of weeks, I think. And it was clear to me that if I stay here, I'm gonna relapse. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna make it out again. So. Yeah, this is going to be a storm. This is going to be hard and nearly impossible, but I have no choice. I have to, I have to leave, get out.
So you're with your hair cut now. You go back to your community. What happens? Does everyone just freak out, or they're angry? What's going on?
So I was hiding at first. So that night I snuck into my parents' house without being noticed. I wasn't ready for the storm that's about to come. I knew it was going to come, but I just tried to push it off. But the next morning, as I left the house, I got up. I didn't put on a hoodie or anything that would cover my face to show that I don't have a beard anymore and payas. And I just walked out of the house. My mom saw me, and she didn't say anything. She didn't know what to say. Uh, and then there was like a week of this awkward silence in the house. There was a giant elephant in the room that nobody wanted to bring up. And in that week, I walked around the house openly without payas and everything. And my siblings were like, if I would like walk past them, they would like sort of walk away from me, being like afraid of, I guess, not really like afraid of me, but like afraid of this new thing, afraid of what just happened. And I was kind of relieved, in a way, because I knew that there's a storm coming, and I wasn't ready for it. But I was also anxious about it because it was gonna come eventually. Might as well get it over with. And the end of that week, one day I came home, and my mom asked me, "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" As if like, I'm a stranger who is trespassing there. And I didn't know what to respond, and I just walked away. And not long later, my dad finally, said, "Ari, we got to talk." We sat down and we started talking about it, and I was freaking out internally. But the gist of the conversation of what he said was, "This is a house with rules, and you do not live here if you don't adhere to those rules." He actually didn't use the word adhere. That's too high vocabulary for a Hasidic Jew, but that's what he said. This is a house with rules. If you don't follow those rules, you do not live here. I asked for specifics in trying to see if there's maybe like a middle ground where we can meet and maybe we can all be happy. It was clear that there is no middle ground. Um, um, all I told him was, I'm staying. This is where I live. And he made it sound like, he was going to call the cops on me and have me kicked out. That didn't end up happening. Well, I basically told him, like, this is where I live. You're not getting me out of here. And I really thought he was going to call the cops and get me out, but he didn't. And over quite a few months, we slowly learned to make it work as a semi-happy family.
So you hadn't left yet then?
Well, it is technically having left, because it's not a physical thing. It's the coming out as not religious is when all hell rains down.
Oh, at this point you hadn't come out as non-religious.
No, when I cut off the beard and payas,
that was the only thing that had upset him.
That is the moment. That's like how someone comes out as not religious. That's like the official, not official, but that's he knew what I was up to. He knew that I was breaking religious rules, but that is the moment he realized that I officially do not want to be religious. I am moving in a different direction. Up until then, he thought he is going through a phase. He doesn't follow all the rules right now, but with God's help, we're going to get him back if we pray hard enough. And then that's when he realized that's it. He just took an exit. He just took a turn on the exit, and he's out.
Oh, so you hadn't said to him you'd become non-religious. That act of cutting your hair was a sign to him that you were sending that I'm not religious.
Yes, that's when they all realized that I am done with this. We don't talk as much as I would want to. Actually, I haven't spoken to them in a while. They're not so happy about the fact that I got a GED and then I'm going to college. That kind of upset them, and we have arguments. We had arguments about that, and then we haven't really worked on starting to talk again. But then I stayed there for a while. I had a really good friend in another city not far who let me stay with them, sometimes for a week or more. And so I could escape often, but I was still living at home. But I was in constant fear that at some point they're going to get sick of it and kick me out.
So people in your community, even the men, don't get college degrees?
No, they don't even have a high school diploma. I think it's 98 or 99% of them graduate high school without a high school diploma. Graduate school, with the age of high school, they get out of school at the age of 18, 19 or whatever, and they don't have a high school diploma. Most of them still don't.
What do most people do as jobs?
I think most of them they get the jobs where it's all family owned businesses type of thing. They all work for each other.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I see.
And the poverty rates are actually really high. And I think what is it, USA Today, that they published an article about the poorest town in every state in the U.S. And the poorest town in New York is New Square, which is highly populated by Hasidic Jews. I think almost entirely populated by Hasidic Jews, with 77% of families dependent on government assistance to put food on the table. 77%. And then the second poorest town in New York is Kiryas Joel, which is a town entirely full of Satmar Hasidim. And in New Square actually has the highest percentage in the country of families dependent on government help to put food on the table. I think 77% is the highest in the country.
And how many people of Hasidic Jews are in this community in where you lived in New York?
I don't know an exact answer to that. I think I've heard the number 300,000 families.
Oh, 300,000 families or 300,000
people?
People. Okay.
I'm not sure what exactly it is, families or people, but that's the number I've heard.
Yeah, I think the documentary said something along those lines as well. So it's I think, which is quite a lot of people. That was a lot larger than I would have imagined there were. So I can kind of see how they would skew a statistic
serious political power.
Oh, also that, yeah, I was going to say that they skew the statistics on poverty in the towns they live in, but yes, they would probably also have a lot of political voting power, I imagine, if they're that sizely a population.
Yeah, people have been trying to get the legally required education into Hasidic schools for quite a few years. Yafed, an organization that I'm closely working with, I think they filed a report over 3 years ago with New York State that Hasidic schools do not follow the legally required subjects. They do not teach the legally required subjects there that they absolutely have to and is absolutely necessary in life. But because of the political power that they have, nobody is doing anything about it. No politician is going to go against, I don't know, what is it, 300,000 votes in New York City. That could make or break a vote.
Yeah, no, that's a large population. That's a and Hasidic Jews do vote then, right?
Oh yes, they vote, and they all vote according to what the rabbi says. So, like, it's like a flick of a switch. You give me what I want, I give you 300,000 votes.
Interesting. See, I was kind of suspicious of certain things along those lines when I was watching the documentary, and I thought, although I don't want to sound conspiratorial, especially when it comes to Jewish populations, you got to be careful with that. But I thought that considering the size of the population, that they probably wielded some political power, but I wasn't even sure if they voted, considering all the restrictions they were. So thank you for letting me know that that they do vote, and you're probably right. They probably all vote in unison, right? As whatever the rabbi says, that's probably you'll get close to 100% of everyone voting as the rabbi says, right?
Exactly, and all the kids, like every time there's an election day, we're reminded of it, days in advance. All of the kids, they take home like flyers with them to the parents. They take it home from school with like a copy of what is the ballot? Is that what it's called?
Yes, the ballot. Yeah.
Yeah, and exactly like say this name is what you should vote for. This name is what you should not vote for. Like an exact list, and people just go in with that and they copy that into the ballot sheet, and then that's how everyone votes.
I see.
So like a lot of people, they don't even research who am I voting for. It's like they take the paper with them, copy it, checkbox for checkbox, and then they leave.
What was the first thing you tried to eat in your more liberated state?
Like a specific food that I've always wanted to try?
No. After you kind of separated more from this community, what did you want to like? What did you eat? Did you want to try new foods or?
Well, first, I didn't go right into non-kosher food.
Okay.
I went to the less kosher food first. So kosher is a certification given by a rabbi saying that this food is considered kosher. And a lot of people have their like standards of which rabbi I trust. So we had our like kosher certificate, a list of kosher certifications in our house that we eat from that. What is certified by that list of rabbis. Everything else is considered less kosher. So first I went to that. Lightning did not strike me at all. I made it through. I think it was the very first thing I had that was less kosher, like some candy or whatever. But the very first time I had food that is 100% not kosher was like street meat or something. It was before I came out as not religious. I was high in a park somewhere. I got really hungry and just went to one of those food trucks, and I was a little scared at first, not because of the religion and something is going to happen, but it was like, this is so new. I'm not sure I know how to eat non-kosher food the right way or something. But it was very new and very unfamiliar. But it was just street meat. It wasn't any specific food that I looked out and wanted to eat.
Well, how was it? How was the food from the truck?
I think it was great. I was high. I can't remember really.
Well, yeah, everything's gonna taste good at that point, but
yeah. It was delicious. It might have been really bad, but I don't remember.
Is there any foods you do remember, like when you were trying for the first time?
Bacon.
Bacon. You add bacon. How was that?
Yes, I love bacon.
Oh,
It's
nice,
just
man.
so unique and awesome. I mean, I I'm not strong enough to be vegetarian or vegan. I wish. Um, but yeah, bacon is something that I feel like a lot of Hasidic Jews are really, really missing out on.
So true. I'm a bacon man. Have you had like a really great bacon burger?
Yeah, I have bacon in every burger that I have. That's the point of a burger without bacon.
Good man. Um, do you have how should I say? I'm not going to ask that yet. I want to ask you about the documentary from Netflix. I was curious about how that came about. How did you get approached for that? How did were they allowed to film a lot of these scenarios and scenes? I mean, how did the whole documentary thing work?
So right about the time that I left, I was sort of consulting on social media with um, someone who's kind of like our rabbi. So the OTD communities is what we call ourselves. OTD stands for off the derech, which is off the path, and it's really, I think, a shame name that rabbis gave us, and we adopted it. So in the OTD community, we don't have a rabbi, but there are some, like, people we look up to. One of those people is Ari Mandel. Um, I had reached out to him before, and he helped me a lot. Really just supported me a lot. And as I was contemplating leaving, what am I doing? Where am I heading in life? And about the time when I came out as not religious, I was talking to him, and he told me, "Hey, I have this, this filmmaker friend of mine wants to, you know, make a film about, you know, Hasidic Judaism and leaving Hasidic Judaism and what happens, and would you be willing to meet with them?" And yeah, I was like, "Fine, let's meet." And that's pretty much it. I didn't like audition or anything. Um, we met at a restaurant one night. I met with the two directors. They asked me every question one can be asked about their life, and at the end of it, I was like, "All right, when do we start?" And I actually had no idea what I was getting myself into at the time. I thought it was going to be, like an online film that was going to be screened at the local coffee shop. I had no idea how big and explosive it was going to get, and I'm glad it was that way. Otherwise, I might have chickened out or not been my true self.
Right. Do you is it something you want to see that community change?
What do you mean by that?
Because I mean, I saw certain scenes with the rabbi you were speaking to, and he says, you're asking us to change, and we're not going to change. The Hasidics have been here for a long time, and we're not going away, something like that. And this is just the way we do things. Do you want them to change the way they do things, or do you think that there needs to be a lot of change in that community?
Well, there definitely needs to be a lot of change. I don't think I am the one person who's going to be the one changing that. I think there are a lot of people working on like several fronts. One of them being education. There are some people working on raising awareness in specific areas like sexual abuse, domestic abuse, and those kind of things. Um, I definitely do want to see change because I'm not the kind of atheist that is, all against religion and well, I personally I think religion is very harmful to society, harmful to individuals. But I also can see how some people find comfort in it. They live their entire life. I think it's a life wasted. That's just my humble opinion. But they live their entire life and they are actually happy. They think there's something great waiting for them on the other end. Well, they never find out. They're never disappointed because, well, they're dead. Um, so it's something that I'm still like researching, like where I'm at with. So I definitely want to see change, but I don't want. It's not like I want to see Hasidic Judaism eradicated or anything like that.
But you want to see it
With
progress
I
more
want to see
towards, yeah.
progress, and I want to see it heading in the right direction. And honestly, most of the problems within Hasidic Judaism, like a lot of the problems, not most, are problems everywhere. Like sexual abuse, that's a problem in every community, even the best of the best. And I don't have any actual like data to look at to see if it's a problem there more or less than anywhere else. But one thing where I definitely see a problem is in what happens after a child tells their parent, "This happened to me. I'm confused. What's going on? What is the next step that happens?" Instead of getting the kid a therapist, they just say, "I don't think that happened. Stop making up stories." And that is an area where I want to see change. Like there's a lot of problems in the community, um, and but there's a few problems that are very unique to Hasidic Judaism, and actually fixing those problems wouldn't necessarily be contradicting to Judaism. It's kind of like I think there's a great like line in the middle where everyone can meet on that.
Mm. How do they handle law and rules in that community? Do they call the police and use secular courts often, or do they keep it very internal and isolated and consult with rabbis when things need to be resolved? How does that work?
So officially, a Jew is never allowed to call the cops or file a motion in court against another Jew for any reason, no matter if it's as horrible as rape. You do not call the cops. You handle everything in the internal courts, which is called a beis din. So there are some scenarios in which a beis din would give you permission to move on to a secular court, but otherwise, if you go to court, you're not looked at in a good way. And I remember actually one time when I called the cops on a neighbor of mine. I was 13. I got into like a fight with some other kids, or something happened, and they I don't remember what it was. I ended up chasing them into their house, their apartment, and their father. I was 13. They were 13, just kids playing, having a little fight, and their father like really beat me up in a bad way. Like my head was bleeding, so I ran home and I picked up the phone, dialed 911, and I told them what happened. And I saw the shock on my mom's face. Like, he's 13 and he already broke such a big rule. Like, oy vey, what is going on here? Cops came, they spoke to everyone. And as they were talking to my parents, my dad said, "No, I think he didn't mean that. He just was trying to make a false claim here. We're so sorry. We're going to discipline him. That didn't happen." And, everyone just moved on.
Well, I want to ask you about your religion, but before I ask that, I want to tell you a story that I think you'll like. Is that in preparing to talk with you, I obviously watched the documentary on Netflix, One of Us, and I was at my parents' home and I was watching it on my laptop, and I thought, like, I need to watch it now because I'm kind of running out of time, and we had planned to talk. And so I'm sitting there watching it. My mother kind of asked, like, "Oh, what are you watching?" And I explained to her your story, and that I'm going to interview you and the community of Hasidic Jews. And she's like, "What, really? I didn't know that these people existed." And she sits down, she starts to watch. My family doesn't really sit down and watch like a movie with me, but she starts to watch. And then my father's like, "What are you watching?" And then they sat down and they watched it the whole way through, my whole family watching on my laptop. And they were so captivated by what they were watching. And that's rare. Like that hadn't happened before, that where I'm watching, because I could be watching many different things, but they just got so intrigued by your story. But there's a moment where towards the end, you were in, I think, a Christian church, And so they were wondering, did you
Yeah.
convert to Christianity? But here you're telling me you're an atheist. So did you experiment with Christianity during that time? Did you ever consider yourself a Christian or something, or was it just to kind of to feel out or for knowledge? What was that?
No, I wasn't. I never considered myself a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
but when I was in rehab, it was a very emotional time for me. Rehab is honestly one of the hardest things I ever went through, and considering everything else that I went through, like that says a lot. And it was very emotional. Like they went through my entire life and like brought up opened up every old wound that they could and tried to patch it up. So it's a very brutal healing process, and I was very emotional. And I remember I was constantly being told, had you given God a real honest shot, you would have seen the light, as they say,
Mm-hmm.
and you would have seen what we see, and everything would just be so much better. So I was like, fine, I have nothing to lose. I'm an emotional wreck. I'm barely clinging onto sobriety. Fine, I'll do it. I don't think it's gonna work, but I'll give God an honest shot. I went to the God that I was familiar with. I started putting on tefillin, which is a religious like thing you put on your arm and head when you pray. And I started practicing Judaism a little better. Started going to Shabbat meals and consulted with a rabbi and everything. And it wasn't working. I gave it a real honest shot, and it wasn't working. And I was like seriously skeptic about God's existence. But before I, consider myself an atheist, got to give everyone a chance. So I went to the Calvary Chapel. I went to Christianity, and that made even less sense to me because having known Judaism, I felt like Christianity was like, we want religion, we want to control other people, but Judaism is kind of going a bit too far. So we're gonna remove some things. We're not gonna go so hard on them. So I felt like people then took Judaism and tried to add a little creative marketing to it, and it just felt cheap. And I was
That's
like,
about
okay,
right.
that's definitely not working. It's like they like circumcision. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you want people to follow your religion, and you got to remove circumcision. You're not gonna tell them that they can't do anything on Saturday. You're not gonna it's like basically they rebranded it and it was like new and improved Judaism. Try our new flavor, um, and that's what it felt like to me. And that didn't like that either. And I also gave that a real honest shot. I went to church and I tried it, spoke to the pastor plenty of times, and no, wasn't working. And then I just bounced around between religions and different versions of spirituality and all that stuff. And eventually I came to the realization that they all have one thing in common, blindly following a God. So why not go straight to the source? I started researching within myself and seeing if the existence of a God makes sense at all. And it doesn't. I try to be, devil's advocate, and I really try to convince myself that in some way a God might possibly exist, but I can't see it. So I officially identify myself as an atheist. And then it went to like an atheist Jew, and then it went to culturally Jewish atheist after I realized that I can be culturally Jewish and an atheist.
Is that I was going to ask you about how you identified as Jewish? Is that your how you consider yourself culturally Jewish now?
Yeah, I'm a culturally
Jewish
Jewish
atheist.
atheist.
You happy with the feeling of being an atheist?
Uh, well, it's not like a feeling. Atheism is not supposed to be like a satisfactory, good feeling. It's more like um, it, it's a realization. It's like a common sense realization.
It's not for me though. See, I've always been an atheist, so I was never religious at any point in my life. So I'm very curious as to if there's any change in feeling or psychology you have when you just realize and conceded the fact, hey, I'm just an atheist. Is there any change in that feeling?
Yeah, it was. I calmed down a little because I was looking for all these answers in a God, and I realized, since I was like really angry at God, with God at first, because it was like, seriously, I'm a good citizen, and this is what you're doing to me. Like, what kind of evil being are you? And once I realized that, God does not exist, so it wasn't like a, me against God, God against me thing. It was just like, okay, life is unfair and a lot of people suck. And, it's not like this notion that is out to get me. And I made peace with the idea that I'm never going to have some answers that I'm looking for. And so it was kind of like, radical acceptance.
How do Hasidic Jews see Israel and the idea of Zionism? Because I heard they're not pro-Israel. Is that true?
Some of them are not. Satmar, the sect that I was in, is very anti-Israel, and they constantly have protests about it. And today, actually, they had like a big, like a general assembly or whatever of a big part of Satmar, where they were just like all speaking against the state of Israel and everything. And yeah.
Can you explain why I mean, when you would hear about Israel or Zionism, what is it that you were taught that your community was against it? Because it just seems counterintuitive to most people to hear that there's an Orthodox Jewish community in America that's anti-Israel.
Right. Well, they're not anti-Israel. They're anti-Israel as being a Jewish state. So it's nothing
Mm.
against the place. It's against the having our own state, because in Judaism, it actually doesn't make sense to me either, because like on one hand, their political power here is massive and they control a lot, and then on the other hand, they're like, no, we shouldn't be in charge. We should just live our lives in peace and not do anything to interfere with anyone else. But it's like, but you're messing up a lot of things politically. So it's kind of contradicting. But also, they feel like a Jewish state is a mask for a secular Jewish state, which they're not okay with.
Ah, I see. I see. How do these communities see the secular Jew that most people in America are familiar with? Do they consider them Jews?
No, not at all. They pretend to be Jewish, but we know the truth. They're not Jewish.
They're not Jewish in any way, because most people have an understanding that Judaism and to be a Jew has two connotations. One is to be kind of culturally, ethnically Jewish in a way, and the other way is to be religiously Jewish. Do they not see them Jewish on any level at all?
Well, in Hasidic Judaism, if you're ethnically Jewish, you're destined to live a 100% Jewish life, and Hasidic Judaism is that 100% Jewish life. So if your mother was Jewish, I think in Islam it's whether your father is Muslim, that then you are Muslim. Is that true?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah. It's passed down from the father.
in Judaism, it's if your mother was Jewish, then you are Jewish, and you're destined to lead a 100% Jewish life. In Hasidic Judaism, the belief is that is the Hasidic way of life and nothing else. So if your mother is Jewish and you're not living a Hasidic lifestyle, then you are a very bad sinner. So while such a person would technically be Jewish by ethnicity, they're not Jewish by religion because they're not 100% Hasidic.
And in that case, anything like marriages wouldn't be allowed with those people, with a secular Jew.
No, absolutely not.
Mm. So where are you at today in life? You're studying? Can I ask what?
Yeah, well, I have about 14 months clean now. I hit a year. That was really exciting. My family actually threw a party for me, I was shocked that they did that. They actually broke some rules there, and for a moment I thought they're coming around, but then uh, the whole heated argument about my education started, and then went right back to what it was. So I got my GED, which is now called Task, with the help of Footsteps, this wonderful organization as mentioned in the film, and they've really backed me up in so many ways, and got me into a high school equivalency program. I am now officially a high school graduate. I have my diploma and my bedroom wall. I'm so proud of it. And I'm going to college. I start on August 1st. Footsteps helped me with that as well. I'm going to Brooklyn College and I'm going to study computer science.
And Footsteps was mentioned in the documentary. Can you explain what that is?
Well, Footsteps is an organization that is helping people from Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox backgrounds live their true life, whatever form that takes. If you're not okay, if you're stuck in that community, you want to live a different lifestyle, whatever that lifestyle is, will help you. And most of what they do is, most of how I've been helped by them is, first of all, the Footsteps community that they got together, which is a really amazing support network. And they also have a lot of volunteers who help people in so many ways. And they help everyone with education and getting into the right high school equivalency programs, colleges, scholarships, and pretty much everything that they missed out on. And that's how I've been helped by them. And they also have so many programs, social workers, and they're starting an initiative on substance abuse, and they're just amazing. And it was started by people who themselves left these communities.
And have you been asked to give talks on your experience after the documentary came out?
Yeah, it was mostly Q&As following a screening. There were a couple different talks and different things. I'm actually in like 2-3 days. I'm flying to Australia. I'm going to be there for almost a month, and there's a couple of speeches there, and Limud, Limud Oz, Yom Limud, and I'm also going to visit the Pathways Melbourne organization, which is like the Australian version of Footsteps, and they've been a wonderful help to the local community there, the local OTD community there. And I know Leah and Mark, who founded the organization. They're amazing people, and I look forward to meeting them and working with them there. So yeah, I'm have been invited to speak here and there.
Great. I mean, you didn't leave that long ago, so I think you still got a lot of experiences coming your way and a lot of things still to learn that I imagine you're really excited about.
Oh yeah, traveling for one. I've been doing that a lot, and it's
Yeah.
it's addictive.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I've lived in quite a few countries. It's a lot of fun. It can be hard, but man, is it exciting
Oh
to
yeah.
yeah. Keep in touch. Ari, it's been a lot of fun talking with you. Can people find you on social media, on Twitter, perhaps?
Yeah, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all over. On my website, I have all of these links. It's rih.me, like arih.me. That's where you can find the links to it. And please, I just wanted to say to anyone listening who feels like the black sheep in their community or is struggling with addiction or really anything where I can lend a supporting hand, please don't hesitate to reach out. I know what it felt when I really needed someone to help me, and really just like, I'm sorry that sucks. I'm sorry you're in this situation. It's going to get better. So if you need that right now, please don't hesitate to reach out. And on any of the social media links or anywhere on my email, or that's also on my website. I'd love to help.
Yeah, I mean, if anyone is listening to this, I'll have the link in the description. And for any reason you just can't contact him or want to contact me first, I'll give I'll drop a message to Ari and ask him if we can make a connect there with somebody. And I mean, your story is very inspiring, and it reveals a part of the United States and a community that has been hidden, I think, for a really long time. And and since I speak with people from so many different religions, I see so many parallels. There's so many similarities, and essentially, people are kept under control in pretty much the same way. There's not a lot of ways to keep people under control. There's only a few, and it was really interesting to hear how you just couldn't be allowed to stay under somebody's control, that you just had to liberate yourself. It's really inspiring. It's really cool to hear that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.